Go to the work programme. It's a vote. We haven't been told yet, which may mean we don't vote. Right. Mr. Devereux, I don't know if Andrew Parfitt wants to withdraw, or you're the expert on the work programme too.
You scalpel while you can.
Yeah, you can work out the answer for Meg on the lodger, who's going to charge £250 for the room. Right, the work programme. Given that we're short of time, let me start by saying last time when we discussed this in, I think it was February, the first 10 minutes of our session were spent with you saying the NAO got their figures completely wrong because their outcome, they said that your outcome predictions were over-optimistic. Do you wish to now apologise to the NAO?
No. We haven't finished the contract, have we?
Those early figures, which is what the NAO said at the time, were outcomes that you expected to collect, to achieve. You were very, I mean, I can give you quotes of it. You said you were very confident you would get to them. You have failed to achieve them, and you spent 10 minutes, I think, at the session. I've got the transcript here, attacking the NAO for not believing the figures that you gave us.
Okay, so two things. One, I'm not going to say that the numbers here aren't lower than we expected. Right, so I agree with that.
Right. So you will apologise to the NAO because that's actually what they said at the time.
But no, with respect, what the NAO said at the time was that my calculations of dead weight and performance were wildly optimistic and it was never going to get there. And I went at some length to explain why it was that, having gone through all the history, 10 years worth of all that data, I remember where this comes, we believed that that dead weight number was still right.
The figures were wrong. They were a third of what the figures that came out are a third of what...
And with respect...
That seems to me wildly optimistic.
Okay.
I don't know what the definition of wildly optimistic is, but if you...
Sorry, may I be allowed to explain the use of the word wildly?
With pleasure.
Okay, but I mean, I think it is pretty wildly optimistic to only achieve a third of what you set out to achieve.
Okay, so let me try again. These are contracts which allow for every provider to spend up to 2 years with every single person that we refer to them. Okay, the data that you've got in front of you is drawn from July 2012, which is therefore 1 year and 13 months for the June.
But you set the profile, Mr. Devereux. You know, we know we're early in the programme, but you set the profile. You said that this time by July 2012, you would have achieved 3 times over 100,000 outcomes, and you at our committee meeting said that the only figure on which we could all rely, you said outcomes were the only true measure of success. It's the only measure apart from attachment on which public money is paid. So it was the only true outcome. I don't want to hear about other outcomes.
Correct. And at our previous hearing, we had no conversation, to my memory, as to the profile at which this would be achieved. The entire conversation was whether or not, at the end of 2 years, with any one cohort, we would or would not have exceeded the 31% minimum job outcome which every cohort is required to require under my contract. Okay? As of today, what the report says is that first contract, June 2011, have currently got 10% of the people that we've referred to them in June 2011. 10% of those people have secured a job outcome.
Have what?
Have secured a job outcome. Okay, 10%, 9.8. It says in the report. That cohort has got to get...
What are you talking about? How are you defining a job outcome in this instance?
I'm saying 6 months in work, which is what the payment mechanism is for most of the payment groups. So the statistics that you're correctly quoting as being low are all to do with job outcomes. Right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain, why I haven't yet given up on the conversation I had with the NAO last time I came here. So over the space of 2 years, what we said in this report, because I brought it with me, because I remember talking about it at some length, was that the minimum performance we expected across all the contract was 31% of the people we referred on every single cohort to have a job outcome like this. Okay, what the report says is so far, for the June 2011 cohort, the very first cohort that went through this, they have now secured 9.8% job outcomes, and that's by July 12. They have got until May 2013 to get 9.8% up to 31%. As the NEO observes, 42% of all that job outcome has been achieved in the last 2 months.
I think you're bottling us with figures again. Go on.
It's not. It's 3.6 is the job outcomes.
Yeah, 3.6. That's what I thought. I couldn't work out where you got even your 10%. It's three. The only figures that we can have that are properly validated are the 3.6, which is the figures from the office.
Maybe you'd like to turn to
you were
paragraph
very
24.
clear last time, Mr. Devereux, that we couldn't take any figures because we all had them from our own constituencies
Would you
again,
like to turn to
except for the
paragraph
Office for
24?
National Statistics.
We'd like to turn to paragraph 24, where the number I'm quoting is reported by the NAO. Okay, the number I'm quoting is from the NAO. It says 9.8% of claimants referred to the programme for the June 11 had received a job outcome by July 2012.
Sorry, then, I think what we're meaning is that they've been placed into work, is that not
Yeah,
correct?
quite.
Well,
That's not the 6 month. That's why I asked the question. So it's you always defined your job outcome because you were very clear this was a payment by results system, which we all think is a good idea, but you defined it as being in work 3 months if you're ESA and 6 months if you're JSA.
Yeah,
correct.
Right. Sorry, yes, of the first cohort you're talking about
I am.
Yes.
Thank you.
It is correct that the people who first started the programme, so the ones that started in June, the outcome rate for those people is now 9.8%, but just those people.
Just for those people.
In figure 4, where you've got referrals, which is what the 3.6% is based on, is that all referrals? That might include people who were referred 2 months ago.
Correct.
That is
or 3
correct,
months.
yes.
So there's no way that they could have had a job outcome as defined by the scheme.
That is correct.
In that period.
And that is why there is this sliding scale as you go through the programme as to what you think the expected performance would be. So our estimate using the department's criteria would be that by the end of July rather, you would probably get about 12% of people into work with job outcomes.
In order to
but
hit
actually it's 3.6%. So
in order
it's
to
about
hit
a
the
third.
31 target.
So
that's over the whole period.
Right.
Exactly. So if I go back to numbers which are now established, I am speaking correctly. For the June cohort, the first one...
June which? At least...
June 2011. The first cohort through the row. I'm just going to keep it simple, actually, because some of you can't comment. For the June 2011 cohort, every single one of those people who were referred, if you then ask how many have had a job outcome by July, the answer is 9.8%. Right? This programme will be a failure if they've not reached 31% by May 2013. Right? You cannot tell now that it will be a failure. You can tell that it's underneath the profile that we originally had, right? And I'm not going to say that it wouldn't be better if it was higher. But at the end of the day, the question is, will they actually get from 9.8% based on outcomes to July 2012?
So what's going to change, given that you're so under profile? You're at a third of the level that you said you would be at. Given that, what are you changing to so that you remain confident that you can achieve your profile now into the future, July 13?
Good question. So remember, the job outcome is the accumulation of 6 months in work. Not necessarily contiguous, but actually just over the period of 6 months. So with every passing month, anybody that's been in work and gets another week's work, they may be working over Christmas for all I know right now, they could actually be already at 5.5 months and need 2 more weeks to get to the 6 months. Okay, so there's something about the cumulative nature of this process.
But are you changing nothing then? What I asked was the question, given that you're below profile at the moment, given that actually there have been a lot of concerns about, we'll come to it after the vote, but there have been concerns about particular providers, and you have concerns. What are you changing to improve your performance so you get back into profile, so you can maintain your confidence that by July 13 you will achieve the performance you committed to?
Okay. So the answer to that is that we are working with each of these providers to make sure they all know actually what good performance looks like, bad performance looks like. So in that 9.8%, you can see in the publicly available data.
You're not changing anything. You're just working with the existing. You're not changing. I mean, I'll tell you the sort of thing that worries me. Okay, by July 13, I may have my dates wrong here. The providers will no longer get the attachment fee. Is that right?
Correct.
And by July 13, they're also going to have to start paying the discount rate to you. When do they start paying the discount that they got the contracts?
She means the price when they bid.
When do they start paying that?
Some providers. Yes. So some providers, when they bid, they obviously bid for a discount with a discount on the outcome fee.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that all starts by July 13. If you look at the performance now, they are so under profile. And they're going to hit these two new financial constraints. One of the attachment fee, two giving you back the discount. Something has to change, in my view, in my humble view, that to ensure that you achieve the performance you intended for this programme. I'm asking you a very simple question. You say you're working with the providers. Is nothing else changing?
The most important thing that needs to change is their performance management of these contracts. There's no evidence in the data that actually this is somehow connected with local employment conditions.
But all of them perform under contract. All of them. There's not a single one that has performed to profile. Not one.
That's correct. But as the report makes quite clear, it's quite difficult to work out what this 2-year ramp-up profile should be. I mean, any properly and diligently.
You can work it out statistically, but if in the real world something doesn't change, I put it to you, if the real world something doesn't change, you will be back in front of us, if you're still in the job, in July 13 or July 14.
I intend to be.
You intend to be good. You will be back in front of us then with some other excuse. I mean, I am astounded that you think your performance to date is sufficient to warrant the confidence, given the financial changes the providers face, to say that you'll achieve it. I'm just astounded. I really am astounded.
And I know you are, and I haven't finished the answer, but it's really important. It's really important to make this point.
Okay, we're going to get a vote, so do it quick.
Okay, so the fact that this is a cumulative performance means that if, for example, people are off benefit, which they manifestly are, and many of them have had spells in work, then actually the elapse of time will drive this up. We may well have got the.
That's nothing to do with the outcomes. It's nothing to do with the performance of the company.
I'm afraid it is, Chair, because actually, if more of them accumulate 6 months.
We think it's to do with the outcome as well. I have got to say, we don't. I mean, it's not. We're not encouraged by the fact that it's significantly off profile. But if, for example, for some reason we don't know, the curve moves differently, it's not inconceivable that it could still be.
Yeah. I mean. And I say that because some of the report makes quite clear there are a number of reasons at the moment which are depressing results. Not enough to make it go away completely, but these things are important. And so when you say obviously I must change something, I'm just asking to bear with me, because actually I think some of this may well actually turn out there'll be better performance management and that later data give us into a better position. However, that said, we are clearly going to look to see what else could we do. So it says in the report here that we're looking with our colleagues in BIS and with the providers whether there's anything else we can do about the way we dispose of money on the skills provision. Right? So we're thinking about, is there anything else that we can do to support the outcomes that you and I both want? So it's not a question of simply saying, well, I'm not going to do anything about it. But the most important thing to do is to go back to these companies that actually have got responsibility for doing this and drive up their.
We'll come back in 10 minutes, folks. 10 minutes. Okay. Where have we got to? And you said you weren't. Okay, just tell me this, because I am more sceptical than some of my colleagues around the table. But I think it may well be that one or two of the providers can't manage under the regime in which you've got, which is why they're not performing. When do you expect any of the providers currently to go bust?
I think the previous Minister of State was quite clear that he thought there was a possibility that some may. I mean, the whole point of risk transfer is actually to transfer risk. And so people that do not perform, as I've explained at great length on the previous occasion, will not be able to make money out of this contract, and that will put them in financial disadvantage. So,
but you're not in any way thinking that the discounts or any of that will go? You're not going to change any of, because my own view, you're not looking at the attachment, because I think they won't be able to financially manage within the envelope that you've given them.
Okay, so I think we said...
To get the sort of performance you want.
Okay, so this is a substantial break with the past in terms of the way we've contracted it. We put
I don't think it is it's a development from past policy.
Well, it's a development which has the effect that no longer am I paying for anything less than an outcome of 6 months once I got beyond the year 3. That being the case, I think it's possible that some people may actually find it a struggle to make ends meet, which is the question you asked me, yes.
But you're not going to change either the regime around. I hear you. I understand. You're going to try and put.
I'm 1 year into this programme for all practical purposes.
So you may.
It's a 5-year programme, and the last thing that you'd ever want to do with a commercial contract is to start mucking around with it 12 months in.
Okay. So you're not going to change anything. The only thing that I heard you're going to.
It would not be value. It could not possibly be value for money at this stage to say, I tell you what, I'll let you off some of the payments, some of the discounts.
Well, no, but it's not value for money if you don't get the people into work. Can I just ask one final thing that I'll pass it on, is that you, on the same days that you put out the statistics in a very odd way, we'll come back to that, you put out a DWP work programme evaluation on your website. And what that found, and this was particularly worrying, if I quote from it, I'm talking about parking of people, and that comes out in the stats in the paper, the memorandum prepared by the NAO. I can't remember whether. Oh, if you look at figure 3 on page 9, it confirms really, I think, probably what your own evaluation said. And I'll quote to you 3 quotes. Available evidence to date suggests that providers are engaging in creaming and parking, despite the differential payment regime. Second quote, those assessed as hardest to help are in many cases left with infrequent routine contact with advisors, and often with little or no likelihood of referral to a specialist and possibly costly support. Third, some providers at least took the view, perhaps surprisingly given the design and remit of the work programme, that it was inappropriate for the hardest to help to be referred to their services at all. Those are 3 sentences taken out of your own evaluation. If you look at the figures on page 9, you just take the ESA XIB people down at the bottom, where your performance is 0.2%. Achieved by July 12, and only 20, if you look at it in individuals, it's 20 people who have presumably been in work for 3 months. What are you doing about that? That is, again, you said there was no, you didn't want parking of hard to help. This is clearly happening, and your own evaluation shows it. So what are you going to change to stop the creaming and parking?
Well, at the risk of repeating myself, we have established a contract with a completely different method of payment to previously, which contractors will not be able to remain profitable unless they tackle substantial numbers of people well beyond the easy to help. And at the moment, performance, as you can see in the chart which the NAO have produced, varies very significantly between providers. So I'm not about to change the nature of this.
What are you doing to tackle the fact that performers are creaming and parking hard to help clients? What are you doing about that? That is your responsibility.
No, my responsibility with respect is to try.
Okay, you have no responsibility to XIB now ESA claimants who want to work.
So the government's responsibility is to put in place the best value for money method for assessing.
You feel you have no responsibility to tackle a group that are clearly not being helped at present?
If I could finish the answer to any one question, we might know the answer. We've put in place a regime in all these different payment groups that tries to identify the right price at which the government should be paying for job outcomes, and made it perfectly plain that unless people are taking action right across that space, they're unlikely to remain profitable and remain in business. That is the clearest possible signal I can give to the private sector to make choices. That is the way in which this system was set up. It was not set up on the basis that somebody wise, a minister, a civil servant, knew exactly how to do this, because all the previous systems, if you remember, were mostly unsuccessful in getting people back into work.
Mr. Devereux,
so we can be busy, but we won't be effective.
Mr. Devereux, well, you may say that. So the purpose, you gave evidence to us, the purpose of the contract, the purpose of the work programme is to support people back into work in the most value for money way. That's the purpose. Yes. And it's a purpose which everybody shares in this room. If your own early evaluation and the statistics demonstrates that a particularly important group of people, those who are on incapacity benefit, who we do want to get back into work, we all want to get them out of work, are not being properly supported, despite your differential regime, cost regime. They're not being properly supported. That's what your evaluation shows. That's what your stats show. Are you telling me you don't really care because as long as the contract you pay for what happens the other end?
I'm not saying I don't care. And in another
well, what are you going to do about it then? The evaluation shows you've got a problem.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the fact that we are 1 year through this contract and people are trying to work out the best way to do this. Okay, we're going through with every one of these providers to understand why their performance is where it is in every one of these payment groups, to try to make sure that they actually understand what they can do that will improve that performance. I'm a little bit coy about telling them that I know the answer, because as I said,
can you tell us what you've discovered so far? For example, I mean, it might not be exactly where you want it to be, but if you look at ESG and Maximus at the top of the chart on page 10, figure 4, ESG is achieving 5%, Maximus is achieving 4.6%. That's double or more than double the people at the bottom. What have you identified so far about what they do that is plainly working better than the people at the bottom? Because that can't just be a statistical or geographical quirk. Presumably there's some difference in method that's having different results.
It's not, and it's the product of two different things, which is why my unhelpful answer to the chair is going to remain the answer. People are actually approaching this in different ways. They have a different process themselves, and B, they have different levels and competence of management going on in it. So on the first instance, I have not specified deliberately what the nature of the process should be. Some people have got different processes. Secondly, different people in different areas are clearly more on top of their own internal MI and managing it and making sure whether they're exactly who they're dealing with and what else they should do to maximise their outcomes than others. And I suspect what you're seeing here is a combination of those with the better definition within the black box I offered them. Some have come up with a better process and some are managing that better. That is the thing that we will then be taking through when we talk to all of these contractors that we're doing at the moment, because they're all being required to actually produce performance improvement plans to make sure we understand what is working well. Now, I haven't come with the actual chapter and verse on what particularly these are doing, because this data is quite recently out, which is why I'm very rapidly back in front of you, 3 weeks after the published statistics. But that is the nature of what we're trying to do here: understand whose processes are working and how and why that process is better than another process. And then secondly, for the same process, because some of these people have got different results in different areas with the same process, that will be down to the local management. It's exactly the same as most other things in life.
Okay, I've got a group of people. I mean, I just have to say to you, I don't think you've answered the question of the hardest to help, because I think you'll find that tell me one provider that's doing well on the on this hardest to help group, the ESA. Which provider is doing well there? I don't think there's one.
I don't think any of them are anywhere near.
Quite. So you've got a problem there.
Yes. And the only way into that is to start to say, okay, so why are, exactly as Mr. Bacon said, some of the people at the top of the tree for what are they doing there? Is it possible that is actually all to do with JSA? Could they translate to some else? I mean, people have to put more effort into understanding why they're getting the good results where they are getting good results, and then actually learn from that elsewhere.
But nobody's getting good results on ESA. I've got a list of Nick, Ian, Jackie, Gito, Justin.
Thanks, Chair.
Meg, sorry.
So, Mr. Devereux, you've talked about getting up to 10% of people or clients who work 6 months or so. Yeah. We've talked about your end target of 30%. You're substantially off your end target, and so you need a step change to get there. I mean, I hear what you say about it being early days, because this is very new. I mean, I also hear what you say about sometimes you've got to run programs because they gain momentum over time, and they sometimes get better, sometimes very quickly over time. I mean, you're really doing very well. And I hear what you say about different places have different methods. Understand that complexity. But you will have a list of people who are clearly underperforming and very unlikely to reach your end target of 30%. At what stage are you going to have a review which cuts off the poor performers and said, and says you really aren't going to get up to speed, you really aren't going to deliver, we need to swap horses here. When are you going to do that, and how are you going to do it?
So the contract provides, as the NEO clocks, for a concept of minimum performance. As I've explained to the chair, since for every single claimant on this programme, the providers are allowed to work within 2 years. The first point, at which the first cohort is out to 2 years, will be something into June 13. We'll have a very good indication of it when we get the data for the end of the year that finishes March 13. If at that stage people are actually underneath the minimum performance, then the contract provides for me to be able to take action against them, including ultimately, if that's where it stays, taking the contract off them. If actually they're above the minimum performance, but one provider is substantially better than the other one, I've got the capacity to switch work between the poorer provider to the better provider. So the short answer to your question is actually during the course of 2013, when they've had a chance to do 2 full years, which is what the contract provides, and we see whether they've reached the 31%, which is the critical benchmark for happiness. If actually we get to that point, we then have some information which we in a contract I can do something with, and I've got both the minimum performance and the share of work clauses in the contract to operate with.
For some of them, you'll have a pretty good idea now that they're underperforming. What are you saying to that?
Well, so what the report records perfectly properly is that for every single one of them, it was 16 at the time of the fieldwork, it's all 40 contracts now.
I'm sorry, I can hardly hear you.
I'm sorry.
You're so softly spoken.
What the report records is that for all the contracts in place, we have asked them to improve their performance, obviously, because it's less than we wanted. It also goes on to say that for 7 of those providers, we've actually written letters to actually say, this performance is really not acceptable, and you need to tell us urgently what it is you're going to do.
Are those the 7 at the bottom of the list?
They're the 7 who we have most reason to believe need to get a letter.
Are they the bottom of the list?
Well, they will be down that end of the market, but the point is that actually you're looking at data which is published. There's some slightly later management information. Some of these individuals will have improved performance.
So you've sent them a letter. What else are you doing?
So the point of the work we're doing with all 40 and with the 7 is to get underneath, in a very forensic way, all the things I've just been discussing with Mr. Bacon. So I want to know exactly, in respect to the process you're doing, actually, how do you know that this is working? Where are the MI that actually tells you this? If it's not achieving what you thought it was going to achieve, what are you doing about it? How can we share the best practice? In other words, it's very hands-on contract management of them against the processes they themselves have devised. And in the event that it's self-evident their process isn't working, then actually to say to them, well, look, over here, this other process is working quite well.
When you say it's very hands-on, did you say you're just writing a letter to them, or are you meeting with them to talk about it?
So do you recall these people called, can we get on the corner? Provider assurance teams, is that the right phrase, I think? So I've got teams of people working in the department who are actually going out and going through in some sort of detail what is going on in these contracts. So there's not just sending a letter and hoping for the best. Yeah. We're actually visiting them, looking at their data.
Just realised that the acronym for provider assurance teams is PATSI.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I'll try to call it something else next time around.
Can you let us know a bit more about this challenge that you're giving them beyond sending the letter, so we can have some reasonable confidence that you're crawling all over these contracts?
So, I mean, this first data has literally come out. You perfectly reasonably, since it's a big government profile, had me back, almost immediately. So these teams are out doing this work now, and they have been for a while now. I'm very happy to write you a note. Why don't I write you a note at the end of January when they've actually done the work which they're currently engaged on, consequent upon this published statistics?
Well, we probably want our report out before then. Okay, Ian.
I guess one of the most sort of damaging media reports about all of this is the sense that it's, if anything, worse than the do-nothing option, and Figure 2 tends to support that view. Yeah. So how do you account for the fact the department gave various trajectories here of what might happen in one case if we didn't do anything, and yet we're performing below that?
Okay, well, two things, I guess. One is, I'm not going to relate to the fact that these are disappointing figures, so we're below the numbers we should. I have to say that projecting the profile to get from 0 to 31% is not a science. Okay, I had a long conversation there about housing benefit and modelling. This is a lot better bait than it would have been in the housing benefit case, but it's still, we're still trying to work this out. And when I said, and as the NAO record, there are some structural things going on here. Some people actually got out of the blocks slower than we expected. They are on average taking a further month to claim beyond where we thought, largely, by the way, because of the care with which we're requiring them to report, not to get into the fraud and error that we've had in previous things. So, at the moment...
But when you... 7,000. If you add those in, that's another 7,000.
And I've not at any stage said that any of these things actually, miraculously put the performance up.
But when you projected the do-nothing option, presumably that wasn't just finger in the air, that was actually based on typically how the long-term unemployed enter the job market and so on.
It was indeed, and so the only optimistic way to understand this would be if people actually positively thought they were giving people sort of more skills to a longer sustained period in employment over the period of the 2 years. Personally, I'm not going to trouble you with that answer because I'm not sure that's correct. At the moment, the figures are the figures. The point is, in no previous contract has this committee been able to even know what the deadline is to start with. Right? We've actually at least built a contract which started with 10 years of good econometric data. So at least we know this now. And with respect, having written a contract for 5 years and had private companies put real money up to cover their cash flow for the first couple of years, they do need 2 years to have a go at this.
Yeah. Going on to the companies, of course, the most interesting data isn't in here, and I don't suppose we'll see it, which is how they're doing in each area. These are the companies in total.
It's published. Yeah, so you can go onto the website and you can dial up any combination of provider, contract, claimant type.
Because
Okay, I didn't say it was easy because I tried myself and I found some data, but not evident. But nonetheless, every possible combination of constituent, provider, data, payment group is out there.
Okay, well that's some homework for me. Thank you. Can I just ask, in addition to what Nick was talking about a minute ago, to what extent are you looking at not just the outcomes, but are they actually following what they said in their contracts? The reason I ask is because one of the northeast providers, I live in a unitary authority area, one of the northeast providers has failed to set up at all in my area, and yet still half the people are being referred to them, so they're having to travel out long distances to go and meet this provider. We've raised it with them, but they still haven't done it. And that particular provider, in their small print, said that they would 50% of their work would be done through the third sector, and I'm not sure any of it is being done through the third sector. So, which is quite important given what this contract did to the third sector in, lots of regards, not just council operations, but the third sector, charitable organisations, and so on. So, are you doing any work to assess whether people are actually doing what they said they would do?
So on the in the bidding process, we did ask people to set down what they were doing. We have essentially determined the bids on the basis of people who've got our plan and then looked at the financials, and that's where you're getting all this discounting and the like. The provider assurance teams should be looking at the extent to which people are actually doing what they said they would do. But can I take that particular example away? Because I don't know the answer to the question. If they said they were setting up, what in practice is the difference on the?
Well, in their bid, they named organisations that they'd never even spoken to, and haven't spoken to since either. Actually named organisations that we work with. So there's some, I think, poor practice there in terms of how they contracted. Final point is, are you, especially given these organisations are likely to be short of money now, are you aware of them either gaming the system or not helping people in the way that was within the spirit of what they originally contracted to save money?
Well, not to save money, no. I'm not aware of that. So, the evidence...
Creaming and parking, not to save money?
Well, no, I took the question to mean, newly seeking to save money based on these results. The parking is what the parking is at the minute. I'm afraid I'm going to come back to the rather simple fact that they took these contractors on in order to deliver an outcomes I wanted, right? If they cannot do it at a price which we've established is a fair price for the taxpayer, then we do indeed have a problem. And to come back to a point that I know the Chair made in another forum, I do understand that at the end of the day, we do want to get long-term unemployed into work. That is definitely what we want to do. But as far as this particular contract is concerned, we try to set it up in the best possible way, learning all that we knew about the past to achieve that. It has proved particularly difficult for successive governments to get the long-term unemployed into work at any price. Right? And at the moment, the emerging evidence is this is below where it should be. That's why we're trying to do the performance. And we need to understand where people are making better results than others. I won't call them good again. Where they're doing better results, to try to cascade on their own. But there's an element, a small element, that says this is still 1 year's data. Right? You cannot get a job outcome until December 2011 for the first cohort. And so we're talking about 6 months of data with another 12 months to go. So we're 1/3 of the way through, even for the very earliest cohort. So a little bit of, should we just wait and see where this goes, would not be inappropriate, albeit with these teams around.
I think my final point on that, in terms of money saving or not, is really what the obligations and expectations are around providers. I mean, I had an example of a constituent of mine who was going into a 6-month job or more, permanent job in the national park, and he basically, I think he needed some kind of safety boots or something, and as I understood the whole way it worked, that would have been in the interests of the work programme provider to help him get ready for this job, but they didn't. They said they had no money, and and I think he ended up going to some sort of charity to try and get these boots in order to prepare him for work. So I think there's something about being clear what sort of help people are due to get and where the boundaries are, because my sense of it is it's not providing the levels of support to people that were originally envisaged, and maybe that's because they are short of money.
Well, when they set these contracts up, I kind of struggle to remember exactly how much money we said they had collectively raised. I think it was only over 200 million, I think. I'm not sure quite where to go with that question, because if you have a contractor who is incentivised to get something to work and is prepared to receive, the thousands of pounds that we're prepared to pay here, who've not forked out for a bit of heavy-duty boots, they're manifestly not optimising their position. Right. Now, at what point do I point out to them that would be a foolish thing to do? Well, I will be doing it with these performance teams, but it sort of slightly calls into question the dynamism of the private sector. If they can't work out a pair of boots, it may well be worth the investment.
And we always suffer from local management. But I guess it goes back to Chair's question about parking and so on. It's the element of whether there are any standards that people, the long-term unemployed, can expect from this process.
We have invited, we had a long conversation about this last time I came, we asked all providers to set down what their minimum standards were, and we did not set a minimum set of minimum standards. Right. We said, look, you're the ones running these contracts, so you better decide what standards you want to sign up to. And actually, if your standards turn out to be wholly unattractive and wholly unworthwhile, you're not going to get jobs. The provider next door ought to do that. Now, at the moment, as you can see, most of these providers are underneath. So actually, there's a hard question about who's actually going to get to the right level. But at an earlier stage, I'm afraid I was interrupted on the point I was trying to make, which is that even within that 9.8%, in other words, the job outcomes for that first cohort, the range at the moment is between 5 and 14%. Right? So the poor performers, even on that cohort at 5, quite a long way to go to 31. The 14 are halfway there, still with a year to go. Right? So
you're now talking about the regional element of the providers by region, is that?
No, I mean.
Oh, you're actually nationally?
Across different providers and different contracts. I've got 40 contracts, right?
Okay.
On average, for that June cohort, they delivered 9.8% by July. Right? Okay. The best one is delivered 14.
Right. Okay.
Gito, Justin, Meg.
Just touched on what I wanted to raise, really, which is that as the time progresses, I completely get your point that we're on a cumulative journey here. But as that time progresses, you really are starting to see the poor providers from the good performers. Right. Yeah. But I also want to address this point as well about the Chair made reference to about parking difficult cases. I mean, the reality is that claimants on ESA are going to be the most difficult people to place in a job. Quite often because they will have been claiming incapacity benefit for a number of years. There are a whole number of psychological issues as well as physical ones. So would you say it was realistic to expect, you know, their journey from entering the work programme to finding a satisfactory job outcome of 6 months to take in excess of a year?
I think it's quite possible it would, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, my point really is that I don't think we should be surprised at this stage in the journey of the 5-year contract that those figures are so low. Did you anticipate that they were going to be significantly lower than the other groups?
I don't know, because all I got in front of me are the aggregate curves. I mean, if I had to guess, the answer would be yes.
Set the same minimum performance standards for all of the groups, the 3 groups that you set standards
yeah,
for?
but they don't include the hardest ISA.
The important thing is, are they working with them? And the evidence from again from, I don't end up my constituency, but the evidence from your own evaluation is that they're not. It might take longer, but they're not working with them.
But actually, I don't think you can draw that inference from
that's their own evaluation.
From the period we're looking at, and I think it will come down to individual providers, actually. I mean, if you look at the 2 providers that work
so I think you can both be right. I mean, I think it's perfectly possible that there is evidence of parking agreement, which is what the research said. And it's also perfectly possible that for those people who are actually being worked within these categories, it will take a long time to deliver an outcome.
Yeah.
And so, the reason for giving people 2 years is because if actually you said to yourself, how do you fancy getting an ex-incapacity benefit ESA claimant into work, the chances are it will take you a long time. That's why we're offering to pay up to £13,700 for that outcome, which is something of the order of 4 times as much as everybody else. Now, it's an interesting question whether or not these levels of payment are still too low to sort of get people's interest. But I'm not sure that it's going to be in the committee's interest for me to suddenly ring up and say, I've got a good idea. If I put the money up, would you do better? That's not the right answer. The right answer to this is to say, look, you cannot make money on this contract if you don't get people into work. That's exactly what NAO established to start with. And consequently, if you put 250 million of your own money up, you're at risk of losing that. So your shareholders are actually got a very vested interest in making this go.
Ito, Justin, Meg.
I just want to clarify a couple of issues in relation to the structure of the contract, which means that you obviously have competition within areas. Yes. So as, for example, in Wales, we have 2 prime contractors. Now, one of the reasons for that was to allow competition between them. So if one was performing better than the other, there could be movement in terms of people referred between them. However, my understanding, having spoken to a number of providers, is that that mechanism can only be applied if the individual contractors are actually hitting their minimum performance standards.
Yeah, so the first threshold is essentially that they need to be at minimum performance level.
Yes.
Because if they're below minimum performance, they're in jeopardy of losing the contract.
But nobody at the moment is hitting their minimum performance standards?
Everybody.
Correct.
Yes.
But also, I mean, this is a provision that we've made perfectly clear will apply from year 3 onwards when we've actually seen 2 years' worth of data.
Yes, my concern is very simple, actually. We have within the figures a significant disparity between the performance of the best providers and the poorest. And yet nobody's actually hitting their minimum performance targets. Now, is there any mechanism within the contract to allow you to invoke that competitive element, even though nobody's actually hit the targets?
I understand the question. I think I don't know, but I'll go and check whether or not the competition inside the market can still apply, even if they're not hitting minimum performance. I'm not currently aware that actually that sort of, as it were, if you're not above minimum performance, this term doesn't apply, because that would be a slightly odd thing to do.
That's my understanding. That's why I was asking for clarification.
Can I check and come back to you, though?
Yes, that's absolutely fine.
Because I mean, that would be a very sensible thing to do, as far as I'm concerned.
Justin and Meg.
One of the defences you've been putting forward is the fact that it needs time to filter through the system. Now, looking at figure 4 on page 10, where there is quite a variation between the top performer and the lowest performers, is there any correlation with the, because it talks about the number of contracts, the time that those contracts have been given? So in terms of, is it the case that the lowest performing ones are the ones who've had the most recent contracts, which would then support your argument, or is there nothing from that we can draw from?
I don't think so. I mean, they didn't all start exactly at the same time, but broadly June into early mid-July, I think, they all sort of started. So this far on, I don't think the sort of the precise date they started is particularly important. I do think it's the case, though, that we expected, certainly when we were doing some of this profiling, all of them to start, pretty much with a zip when they started the contract. And it's quite clear some did start with a zip and some didn't. So I don't think it's the actual date, it's the efficacy of the work they did in those early months. And I think that's probably the biggest discriminant here, is actually whether or not they actually put their foot on the gas to start with.
Meg?
A couple of questions. One on the employment support group. Have you done any analysis, or will you be doing any analysis of which bits of that group are doing better? I, for instance, have a high number of instances of people with mental health problems that were on incapacity benefit. They, and I talk about the challenges they have getting into work. We know that's quite a difficult group to get into regular employment. And will you be disaggregating the outcome in your ongoing evaluation?
Again, I'd have to check, because that's not a sort of a particular data marker which will be a part of the contract, obviously, because we don't ask within the ESA that. It wouldn't surprise me if the research contracts have got going that's uncovered the sort of things that the chair has talked about would indeed dig into that. But I'm afraid I would have to just go and check that.
Okay, because if there's any information you can give us on that, I think that's quite important, because it does. So it's the hardest to reach groups are going to be some of the most challenging ones.
But you're asking about within each group if there is, mental health issues.
Well, yeah, actually, yes. So, for instance, I know G4S was. I should have said at the very beginning. I need to declare an interest that my husband is a non-executive director of a work programme provider. But if, say, for example, G4S, for which he does not have any connection, was doing a particularly good job in its percentage on people with mental health problems, would you be learning lessons from that? You talked about learning lessons. Would you be breaking it down to that level, so that where there was that particular expertise?
The answer will be, insofar as the research contracts that we've got going are actually are capable of looking at that level of detail, then yes, we would. I don't know what they are, so can I find out and let you know?
Okay, I'm certain we can ask those questions later. And then the other question I had was about the geographical links to performance, and whether you've now analysed this list against geographical unemployment rates and so on, because I guess in Teesside it's a bit harder theoretically than in Hackney, but in Hackney we have a 12% unemployment rate nevertheless. So
but that does not seem to be in effect. So you see the last sentence of paragraph 15, the NEO's concurring with our analysis, which is that actually one of the possibly surprising things, but actually supports my view that this needs more time and more direct management action, not a change of course, is actually this is not actually correlated with the labour market. This is to do with how well the provider on their contract is operating in their area, and it's not driven by, well, these are high unemployment, these are low unemployment areas, which is why I keep thinking that the right answer to this is to actually go back and confront these contractors with their low performance and make sure that they're learning lessons.
Mm-hmm. In the level of detail that you're looking at this, are you doing any analysis, or will you be able to tell us at some point, if you can't tell us now, whether there are any specific contracts between work programme providers and different employers? We've heard before that some work programme providers deal with all the vacancies for particular, for instance, large supermarkets. Mm-hmm. Are you aware, or is there any rules about whether money can change hands in that transaction? Because what I'm also hearing is with one large supermarket chain, I haven't had enough data to verify it, so I won't name the supermarket. There's a belief that some truth that they will only offer 16-hour-a-week contracts to people, which suggests a very direct relationship with some of the work programme outcomes. So existing employees who need to up their hours because of other changes we were discussing earlier are unable to do so. So there's a big interest, a shared interest from the supermarket and from the work programme provider in sticking to 16-hour-a-week contracts. Is that an intended outcome from the DWP? Do you care? Do you mind? Or is there something that's an unintended consequence?
Well, I think if you invite the private sector to try to get difficult to help people into work, which we've all just established is quite difficult and they're finding it hard to do, and we say to them, look, you design your process, I'm prepared to pay this for it, it's their choice what they then do with that payment as to whether or not they then change the market, seems to me. And I don't think I want to go around and say, well, it's basically your choice to run this process you like, but you may not do this and you may not do that. So if it seems to me it's a bit like the question of the boots. Is it somehow market distorting for the provider to buy a set of safety boots for somebody, and or is it market distorting that there's some arrangement with a local supermarket about what hours they offer and what payment are they making?
I think it is a bit market distorting to say it's easier to get a part-time work at 16 hours a week in certain sectors than regular full-time work, because actually the woman, you gave that example of a woman with 8 children now, full-time work with 8 children challenging, work with children challenging full stop, but actually if she was able to get full-time hours, she'd have more income, anyone would, and that can ease their path in life generally.
But if they're only in that case, she was working part-time.
Yeah, because of the children. Sorry, that was not a good example.
The sort of job you just described is exactly the one she would need.
Yeah, so a lot of people do like those things, but if you want to work full-time and that's the sector you're in, it's very difficult if there's this 16 hours seems to become the golden mark. Can I give another example, Mr. Devereux? It's slightly off this particular subject, but I had classroom assistants in my local primary schools have been called in by their DWP advisors and told they needed to leave their job and go and work in the local supermarket in order to increase their hours from 10 or 11, typically for a classroom assistant, to 16 in a supermarket. Well, many of them had got their life and finances were worked, and childcare and everything worked out around their hours in school. And one of my heads, who was experienced, challenged the DWP to find the relevant rule, regulation, ministerial statement, whatever this was bedded in. Nothing was forthcoming, so that was then left. Another head felt pressured and somehow managed to manufacture an extra 4 hours a week for somebody.
So the current benefit system, as we all know, has got some odd rules in it. The whole point, not the whole point, because I keep coming back to important points about it, but within the universal credit world, there are no artificial constraints on hours. We will let you work 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, and every single hour you will earn. First of all, you get all the money for the first 2 hours, because that's what the disregard is all about. And after that, every single pound you earn, you'll get at least 65 pence for end of story. So the thought that somehow or other people are sort of adjusting the labour market to make some reflection of the way in which the benefit system is obviously a daft way of doing it, and that's why we're changing it in universal credit.
Okay.
And that's not new. I mean, that happened under the previous system as well. That's 16-hour thing.
Can I just ask a very final question before we wish you a happy Christmas? Why are you going back on your commitment to publish these outcome data every 3 months?
Because we didn't commit in the first place. I think there may have been a misreading of what's going on here, so forgive me, but we did say when we first started publishing the referral and attachment data that it would be published quarterly. I'm not aware that at that stage anybody did anything about the frequency with which the outcome data would be published. What we've now done is we've published the November figures for the reasons that...
What, for the November figures for what?
So there was
referral and attachment, or
no. So what I'm trying to explain is there was an original pattern established of quarterly data on referrals and attachment.
Yeah.
We have never said that we would do outcomes on a quarterly basis, so we've not changed our mind. Right? What we have said, though, this is a brand new series, and the frequency with which it's published is actually a matter of judgment by the national statisticians who have working for us. They have determined, which is why we have the first ones in November, and you wanted it earlier, but it's in November. We've also agreed and pre-announced the next one will be in May. That does not mean, though, let me be very clear, that we're saying it will then be 6 monthly, because like you, and we all want to see the end of March 2013 data as soon as possible. So my expectation is that having got this series stable, they well understand it, they know how to put the National Statistics flag on it, you'll see the end of March data before the summer recess. So we'll be back into a much more frequent publication at the point at which we know what the level of the series is.
But well, we look forward to seeing you then. And I hope in the future, in your press releases, you don't give credence to the trade data, that we stick to the outcome data, which is... I assume you okay. You must in fact take responsibility of the accuracy of the information in your press releases, and all the data in there was unverified trade association data, which I've been very sceptical of personally all the time.
It was trade data.
Pardon?
It was trade data.
It was trade data, and that just shouldn't appear in a department. It appeared at the top of your press release rather than the figures which are the published and authorised and figures from the national statistics.
We've tried best to reflect what is a national statistic and what actually is not under our control, but is nonetheless in the public domain and potentially relevant to the subject.
I hope that is reflected in your forthcoming press releases on it. Thank you very much. Happy Christmas, and I hope you'll join us for a drink upstairs.
I'd love to.
And happy Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
We're going to be late for our own party.
I know, we're late for our own party.